accessing tax payments for Massachusetts residents. I'm Allison Bovell-Ammon. I'm the Director of Policy for Children's Health Watch. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded. We'll post it on our website at childrenshealthwatch.org, and it will be linked on the findyourfunds.org page. And we'll also email a link to everyone following the webinar. On your screen, you'll see a Q&A box. Please submit any questions you have into the Q&A box. We'll have time at the end of the presentation to answer them, but feel free to add them at any time throughout the presentation. Next slide. So we know that taxes are often really complicated and daunting for many people. And so today we really have one simple goal, and that is to increase access to cash payments through the tax system for people who generally don't file taxes in a normal year. So on this webinar, you'll learn about what payments are available through the tax code, how to increase awareness of those payments, and how to help your clients and other community members, and even yourself, to access those payments. You know, we've been hearing a lot recently about the IRS issuing a lot of cash benefits to families. Whether they like it or not, this system is changing. And so we want to make sure that people who are eligible for those tax payments are able to access them through the tax system. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sarah, to get us started.
Hi, and next slide, please. My name is Sarah McKittrick. I am a project manager at the Shaw Family Foundation. Our foundation's become really interested in the expanded tax payments as a way to help lift individuals and families out of poverty. So we joined forces in this work to increase awareness of these new payments and like Allison said, make sure that everyone gets access to the payments that they're eligible for with our partners here, which includes Children's Health Watch, Greater Boston Legal Services, Mass Law Reform Institute, and MassCap, so Mass Association for Community Action. We're really grateful for this partnership, and we're excited to bring this webinar to you today, and then we'll also share more information about the findyourfunds.org website that we've created. Next slide.
We're pleased to welcome this morning, before we get started on some of this content, remarks from Senator Ed Markey. We are grateful to our entire Massachusetts delegation for being champions of these issues and voting for the American Rescue Plan. Senator Markey is a consumer champion and national leader on many issues related to energy, environmental protection, telecommunications. He also has a prolific legislative record on major issues, including the one we will discuss today, and a deep commitment to improving the lives of people in Massachusetts and across our country. So thank you, Senator Markey, for sharing these words.
Senator Ed Markey here, and I am just so excited to be joining you for this important child tax credit webinar. And a big thank you to the Shaw Family Foundation, Children's Health Watch, Greater Boston Legal Services, the Massachusetts Association of Community Action, and the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute for hosting and organizing this webinar and for launching the Find Your Funds website. Right now, in the United States, nearly 11 million children are living in poverty, most of whom are Black, brown, and immigrants. Between 6 and 10 million children live in a household where they did not eat enough because their parents did not earn enough to put food on the table. And in Massachusetts, 1 in 8 kids lives at the federal poverty level, 1 in 4 lives in a low-income family, and 1 in 3 lives below the family economic self-sufficiency measure. Let me say that again. We're Massachusetts. We're, if not the wealthiest, at the very top of the wealthiest states in Massachusetts. And in our state right now, as we are meeting, 1 in 8 kids in our state lives at the federal poverty level. And 1 in 4 lives in a low-income family, and 1 in 3 lives below the family economic self-sufficiency measure. That is simply unacceptable. In Massachusetts, in 2021, our commitment must be to those who need our help the most, especially our children. In a country where the 3 richest men have as much wealth as the bottom half of all Americans combined, we know who needs our strength and ingenuity the most. The American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed into law will help chip away at this economic inequality that has plagued our country since its founding. The child tax credit expansion in the American Rescue Plan is the biggest investment in families and children we have seen in the modern era. This and other tax provisions in the American Recovery Plan will cut childhood poverty in half. In Massachusetts, 1.1 million children will benefit from this expanded tax credit for children, 43% of whom are children of color. But they will only benefit if their parents have access to the knowledge and the tools that they are entitled to, so they can maneuver through this labyrinthian, complex process so they can get the funding for their children. The Find Your Funds website is a user-friendly platform to answer common questions, provide information on what payments people may be eligible for, and how to file or access payments. This website and this webinar will help folks file a 2020 tax return and help non-filers get their benefits. This means that traditional non-filers could get thousands of dollars in missed economic impact payments or payments for their children through the expanded child tax credit. And unlike before, the American Rescue Plan allows families to utilize this relief prior to tax season, making it so that they have the money when they need it, not when the government deems that they should have that money. And so it's critical. We work to get people the benefits that they're eligible for as soon as possible, because we know the impact direct cash payments have on the quality of life for so many struggling right now. Just recently, an analysis of Census Bureau surveys shows that the 2 latest rounds of direct cash payments significantly improved people's ability to buy food, pay rent, pay their utility bills. And many people think, well, it's all over. We're stopping wearing of masks. We're outdoors. Things are going great. More people are getting hired. But for so many people, so many families, that's still not the case. So these payments are helping to reduce anxiety and depression, with the largest benefits going to the poorest households and those with children, because they're still impacted. The child tax credit expansion was a massive investment in families and children. We have to take this enormous achievement and make it permanent. We need to ensure that children don't fall back into poverty after this credit expires, because this relief currently has an expiration date, but parenting does not have an expiration date. Feeding and clothing your children does not have an expiration date. I am committed to fighting to make the expansion of the child tax credit permanent. I believe that we are on the right path to defeating childhood poverty in Massachusetts and throughout the United States. But we just can't stop yet. We must continue to fight for families, for parents, and for their children. As Massachusetts' own Ralph Waldo Emerson once famously said, "The first wealth is health." Let's make his words a reality for every child and family in the Commonwealth. I'm so grateful for the professionals on this webinar who are assisting families each and every day with their taxes to ensure that parents across the Commonwealth are able to secure these life-saving benefits. You are true heroes. I'm so honored to stand with you today. Thank you for what you are doing. With a helping hand, we can make sure that every family, every child gets access to this funding, which is still so desperately needed. Thank you all for what you are doing. Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you, Senator Markey, for those words. We certainly believe at Children's Health Watch that the first wealth is health. And we are we agree that these payments are really important, but unless people have access to them, the impact that they will have will be diminished. And so in this first section of the webinar, I'll go through some high-level policy basics around what the payments are, what people are, who is eligible for them, and how to receive those. This is really important because there were 3 rounds of stimulus payments that have happened already, and 220,000 Massachusetts residents we know missed those payments. So that's about $3,200 still left on the table. We also know that there was this incredible policy victory that happened in the American Rescue Plan with the newly expanded child tax credit. The estimates are that it could cut child poverty in half, but that is only true if the child tax credit reaches all of those children who are eligible. The IRS has already said that about 88% of children will automatically, families with children will automatically receive these benefits starting on July 15th, but we know that that leaves out about 12% of eligible children who are disconnected from the IRS system, many of those who are very low income families and those who are most likely to be in need. In Massachusetts, this policy alone will lift 355,000 children out of poverty and 55,000 children out of deep poverty, again, only if they are connected to the system. Finally, the Earned Income Tax Credit is a great anti-poverty tool that benefits those who work but have low or moderate incomes. Here in Massachusetts, the average EITC filer gets about $2,000, which brings in $777 million in federal money to the state. But even though these have tremendous benefits, we know about 1 in 5 people who are eligible for the EITC didn't claim it at the last tax filing season. So we're really trying to close these gaps to make sure that those who need it the most are able to access these critical benefits. Next slide. So we won't go into deep detail on the tax code, and we will keep this to only an hour, so we'll continue to refer people back to the FAQ page on the findyourfunds.org website for some of the nitty-gritty detail. But we wanted to give some high-level overview of some key terms that we'll be using throughout this webinar. So first of all, a tax return is the way that people are going to be able to access benefits. And we'll talk a little bit about what options there are to file a tax return to access these benefits, but that's generally what we're referring to. A tax refund is the money that people receive in often either the form of overpaid taxes or credits. It's the money that the IRS sends someone. A tax credit is the extra money that you're allowed to subtract from your taxes due to or a boost in order to boost or your tax refund higher. So there's non-refundable credits that can reduce the amount of taxes you pay all the way down to 0. But a fully refundable or partially refundable credit, which is what we'll be talking about more today, can reduce the amount of taxes you owe to 0 and add money to your tax refund. So that's the money that people really get back in these forms of checks or direct deposits. We'll also refer to this group of people that's colloquially known as non-filers. This is really the group we're trying to reach the most. These are people that are not required necessarily to file a tax return because they have low or no income, or for a number of other reasons that someone might not be required to file a tax return. But again, in order to access these benefits, even people who are not required to file tax returns will have to file with the IRS either through a non-filer portal or a full tax return in order to access the benefits. Next slide. So in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, as I'm sure everyone on this is aware, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan. And as part of that, it included major expansions to earned income tax payments, to the earned income tax credit, to the child tax credit, and to economic impact payments, also known as stimulus checks. In order to get these payments, including stimulus checks, you have to file a 2020 tax return. Non-filers, people who are not required to file taxes with the IRS, can file any time up until October 15th when the IRS closes for the year. Now we're going to give a brief overview of the 3 main payments that we want to connect people with through this website. Next slide. So the first are called economic impact payments or stimulus checks. These were major direct cash benefits to families, but as I noted before, many people were not able to access them in 2020 and the early part of 2021. There are many reasons that people miss payments, including not being connected to the tax system or regularly filing taxes, or they got payments for themselves because they are Social Security beneficiaries, but they might have missed payments for their children or other dependents because they weren't aware that they could file for them. And then another major reason was there were a lot of rule changes between the 3 economic impact payments that have gone out thus far for mixed immigration and citizenship status households. There were 3 different sets of rules for each of those payments, which we know created a lot of confusion for immigrant families, which we're hoping to untangle a little bit here and with the FAQs on the findyourfunds.org website as well. So what we want people to know is that that you can still access your 2020 and 2021 economic impact payments if you file a tax return in order to claim those payments. Next slide. So the next credit we want to talk about is the child tax credit. This is what Senator Markey was really touting in his remarks because it was such a major advancement and big change in the way in which the child tax credit was previously structured. The child tax credit is a tax credit that's been around for many, many years to help offset the cost of raising children. However, pre-2020, the American Rescue Plan, it was only partially refundable, and people could only receive a credit up to $1,400 per child for children ages 0 to 16. And as such, because it was only partially refundable, it really only benefited people with more moderate, the greatest benefits for people with moderate to higher incomes. And and those people who had low, very low, or even no income were either ineligible for the credit or only received very small credits. And it was also paid out in a lump sum when you filed your tax refund. The American Rescue Plan's advanced child tax credit expansion, however, increased the amount of the credit. So families with children ages 6 to 17 can now receive $3,000 total over the year. Children under 6 can receive $3,600. And the key piece here is that it was made fully refundable. So families with little to no income are eligible for that full amount. Another key change was that this credit was made into an advanced monthly payment. So families who file can start receiving monthly payments starting in July, from July until December. There is no income requirement again, and the rest of the money will be paid out in January 2022, excuse me. Next slide. So here's a table with the income ranges for single filers, head of household filers, married filing, jointly filers, in order to receive the full credit amount. You can get the full credit, you can get a credit for each child that you have that meets the definition of dependent children. Again, there's a whole section on the FAQs. If you have questions about what constitutes as a dependent child, you can look more there. And the payment amounts are lower if your income is above those incomes listed on the screen, and goes all the way up to very high incomes, $400,000 for married couples and $200,000 for everyone else. After that, no payment is made for those families. Next slide. Finally, we'll cover the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is a refundable tax credit that is available to people with low and moderate incomes. In order to be eligible, you must have an earned income, at least $1 to claim an income. And filers in all people claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit must have a Social Security number. I should have noted on the previous slide that for children, they must also have a Social Security number for the child tax credit. For the Earned Income Tax Credit, credit amounts depend on the amount of earned income and the number of children that the family has, up to 3 children. So a single adult without children can get about $700. A family with 3 or more children could get up to $8,658. A major expansion also happened in the Earned Income Tax Credit in the American Rescue Plan that will kick in tax year 2021. So when families file their taxes for next year, they file their 2021 taxes next year in 2022, adults who are not raising children in their household, their maximum benefits will increase significantly, more than 3 times the current level. And on top of all of these benefits, we are fortunate in Massachusetts to live in a state that provides a state level Earned Income Tax Credit. So that piggybacks on the federal tax credit. So whatever you get in federal tax credit, you get 30% additional boost in your Earned Income Tax Credit here in Massachusetts. Next slide. So now we'll go through a couple of examples just to sort of bring this to life on what this will look like for families and individuals. So here's our first example. We have a single parent of 3 children, ages 3, 12, and 15. That parent made $10,000 last year, and everyone in the family was born in the United States and is a US citizen. They have not filed taxes because they don't need to. They don't have a tax filing obligation, and they didn't get their stimulus payments for anyone in the household. So if this family was to file a 2020 tax return, they could get $10,000, $700 in stimulus checks for the parent and child, approximately $5,864 in EITC, plus the additional 30% boost on top of that, and $9,600 in the 2021 child tax credit, again, paid out over multiple months. That totals about $26,000 to this family. So this is really, and that could actually even be even more if the family were able to access the 2020 child tax credit, not just the expanded advanced child tax credit. So this is significant money that families may be able to access if they are connected with the tax system and eligible. Next slide. Finally, we wanted to give an example. We wanted to talk a little bit about immigrant families. Many immigrants are eligible for these payments, and for many of the payments, if the immigrant filer themselves is not eligible, they may be able to get payments for their children, particularly if their children are US citizens. So immigrants with Social Security numbers can get all of the benefits that I have outlined here, including missed stimulus payments for themselves or eligible family members, child tax credit for eligible children, and the Earned Income Tax Credit. Immigrants who do not have Social Security numbers can apply for what's called an Individual Tax Identification Number, also known as an I-10. This is used by immigrants to file their taxes, even if they don't have a Social Security number. And given that many immigrants pay taxes out of their paychecks and on purchases, we know that immigrants contribute significantly to the tax system and are entitled to benefit from it and the credits that they are eligible for. So you can apply for an I-10 at the same time as you submit your 2020 tax return. And with an I-10, eligible immigrants could get the 2021 stimulus payments and or the 2021 child tax credit for eligible children that have Social Security numbers. So what does all this mean? This means that, you know, there's a lot of money to be had for families across the Commonwealth and across the country. It's important to note that this receipt of this money does not impact immigration status or the immigration status of people that you live with. And the funds do not impact the benefit levels of things like SNAP, TANF, cash assistance, housing subsidies, other public benefits that people might be participating in, because these do not count as earned income in those programs. So I will turn it over to my colleague Sarah again, who will talk more about the findyourfunds.org website. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. So now that you know everything that people can get through the tax credits, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can spread the word to individuals that you serve. So next slide, please. So first, just starting with our key messages, and this just kind of reiterates what Allison just spoke to, but when we were developing the materials, we really wanted to keep our messaging simple. So our main takeaway here to folks is that you could get thousands of federal money with tax payments. And as you saw, a lot of money is on the table. And you can apply for that money with a 2020 tax return to see what's available to you. Like we said, you do not need to have an income to get these payments. And a few key points kind of under this that we have throughout our messaging, that, you know, you can apply at any time. May 17th was the deadline for people who have to file because of the amount of money that they make. But there's no penalty if you make low or no income to file after May 17th. If you make $57,000 or less, you can actually get free help in signing up for payments. And these payments do not count, and I saw a good question here in the chat, they don't count for income for public benefits programs like Allison just alluded to. And again, just reiterating one more time, these payments do not impact the status, your status, or the status of the people you live with. It is safe to get the payments that you're eligible for. A couple notes here that I just wanted to point out. We were really intentional in the language that we selected here, because we know that people who traditionally might not file taxes, the words file or taxes or tax return might not resonate. So we tried to align it with how people might hear or learn about public benefits programs and use the words like apply or sign up, etc. So that's just something to note here. And next slide, please. And so given all of this, we've used these messages to develop some tools to help spread the word. The first and probably the main thing that we have, like we've been alluding to, is the findyourfunds.org website. So please go on and take a look. That's really a one-stop shop where people can get all of the information that they need to do their taxes. There's 3 simple pages. There's an in-depth, like Allison said, FAQ for folks that really want to learn more and get more into the nitty-gritty. But we tried to keep it as simple and high level as possible. The website is available in 6 languages: Spanish, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, Vietnamese, and Chinese, and English. And you can get to those languages by hitting the bottom right corner. Also, one thing that's really important to mention about the website is that it is mobile friendly. So we know that a lot of people will be visiting the site on their phone. So we've made it as mobile responsive as possible. So it looks really great, I think, on the phone. The other things that I wanted to call out are our outreach materials, and you can get to those by going on the findyourfunds.org website and clicking on our outreach materials page. We have templates available in 11 different languages, so hopefully you can find something there that works for your organization or school or community. We have flyers, we have social media posts and suggested copy. We have email templates that you can use and download. We also have template robocalls and text messages as well that all kind of highlight the key messages that I mentioned earlier and drive to the website for people to get help. And again, those are available in 11 languages. So all that being said, we would love your help. We can't say this enough. This is a lot of money on the table. We really want to get the word out to folks, and we know that leveraging trusted sources is the most important way to do that. So please use these materials to spread the word to your networks. Use the email templates. If you have text messaging capability, we find text messaging to be the most effective. Post on social, post the flyers out in your community. Anything that you can do would be really great. And then just one more thing before I turn it over. We did kick off a big media campaign this week and an outreach campaign across the state to drive people toward this site. And just wanted to highlight a couple things. So we're working with media in languages other than English. So if you tune into El Mundo today at 2 o'clock, we're hosting a Facebook Live in Spanish about this website and the tax payments. We also are going to be across different radio stations in Portuguese and Spanish. And then we're really grateful to the Department of Transitional Assistance. They're helping support this effort in getting outreach to their clients through texting and a few other different channels. So we have that rolling out in the coming weeks too. And so again, we know that the most effective communication is through trusted sources. So we hope that you can use these materials. Next slide. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie Mallard. She's the managing attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services. Melanie's unit has been working intensively with clients who have the greatest barriers to accessing these payments. And so she's going to cover how people can apply for taxes and then how you can help people who might need extra support in applying.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, I'm Melanie, and I'm glad to be here. Since the first stimulus payment last spring, I and mostly interns and others in my unit who mostly work on welfare started reaching out to clients who we knew were very unlikely to be filing taxes, and clients who definitely had no taxable income, no earnings. So in their minds, no reason whatsoever to file for taxes. And we began helping them get the first stimulus payment, and then the second stimulus payment when it came along at the end of the year. And then when the American Rescue Plan was passed, also trying to assist folks in getting the much more generous stimulus payment, $1,400 per eligible family member, including both children and adult dependents. And also to start worrying about getting the lowest income families in the Commonwealth with children who have no connection with the tax system signed up with the IRS, so they would start receiving the child tax credit when it begins in July, the new expanded child tax credit. And one of the most historic things about it is the fact that you don't need earnings to qualify for it, that it is a program that in part is very much intended to lift families out of poverty. And unfortunately, the irony is the families in the deepest poverty are the least likely to be able to access it on their own. Next slide. So currently, with most of the free tax filing programs, people may be familiar with them as VITA sites, funded and certified through the IRS, are closed down. They tend to be open just during regular filing season. The 3 ways to file, unless a person has some individualized help, is a website called Get Your Refund, which was established by an organization called Code for America, social justice related creation and coding of websites, and they took on this issue of folks without access. And when you go to the Get Your Refund site, which we recommend, there are options. It can lead you to a form to file directly taxes on your own, but very critically, it can lead you to an option to fill out a questionnaire and then get connected to some free tax preparation organizations that are working with Code for America, who are staying in business throughout the period IRS remains open for filing, and to provide direct qualified tax preparers to hook up with clients. There still are barriers with that, though, because not everybody can access a website like Get Your Refund or make it through all the questions and be able to enter answers. But that is a great source if you are trying to help someone file who otherwise couldn't fill it out on their own. Free File is the IRS's option for free access to, essentially tax software. Some of the companies like TurboTax have made a somewhat simplified version that IRS provides for free on their website, and you can get that you can get there directly through IRS. You can get through links and Find Your Funds, and Get Your Refund also provides that. And as Allison mentioned, coming soon is an IRS special so-called portal for folks to at least sign up for the child tax credit. Since we haven't seen it yet, it's not completely clear it'll be a means to get missed stimulus payments. So we're still encouraging filing 2020 returns to claim any and all missed stimulus payments, as well as getting on record for the child tax credit. But for folks who don't connect to any help, from the experience with the quote unquote non-filer portal under last year's stimulus payments, people who are leery of filing tax returns didn't see this as filing a tax return, even though it really is. But they do have to find their way to the IRS website and to this portal and be able to answer questions, which some folks will find challenging if they don't have help. Next slide. As the IRS has been putting out lots of publicity, the fastest way to get a payment if you file is both to e-file, file online, and to have a bank account and provide the bank account information and get it through direct deposit. Safest, fastest. In the absence of a bank account, IRS will mail a check for the stimulus payments. They recently still been using debit cards as an alternative, prepaid debit cards. You don't really know in advance which way you're going to get paid, so it's worth flagging to people to expect one or the other if they don't have a bank account. Clients who don't have a permanent address, we've been working with a number of homeless clients. If they have a trusted family member, friend, or a trusted helper organization, provider organization, for example, St. Francis House in Boston, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, have referred a number of their clients to us and have allowed the clients to use their address as a safe place for the client to receive a check or debit card. And finally, there are some banking programs that are very low cost, easy to use, have little or no minimum balances, and the City of Boston's Bank on Boston has some information about those. And we also learned of a completely web-based mobile app banking program, bankdora.com. And we've actually worked with them with some of our clients. Some of our clients needed assistance setting it up, but once set up, was one of the easiest for folks to find. So if you're in a position to help people who don't have bank accounts, there are some resources for that, and those resources also are available on the Find Your Funds on our website. Next slide. So we're seeking, not anyone who, if you can help any individual in your life or work who has access barriers to filing. They don't have a computer, they don't have a website, they don't really have the skills, they may not have the reading level. A lot of the IRS information that explains things is at a college reading level or beyond. But in addition to that, there's an incredible need for a gap between one pool of mass residents and organizations like VITA sites, organized free tax preparation sites for low-income people. And that's folks who need help getting documents they've lost, figuring out what they can do when they don't have the documents that a VITA site normally requires, what they can do when they don't have the information, all of the information at hand to fill in, when they don't necessarily understand the questions. So we are seeking any organization who might at all be interested, particularly this year and now, while it's still possible to file to get thousands and thousands of dollars for these mass residents. And while VITA sites are largely shut down, any organizations who might be willing to partner with us to, in an organized way, assist clients, not as tax filers, not as tax experts, but just to collect information and be able to enter it into a website where the person themselves cannot do that. And that way they can be connected to a tax preparer through the Get Your Refund website, or we're also seeking volunteer tax preparers who we might be able to directly contact you with. Finally, I'll just say at Greater Boston Legal Services, we work with a volunteer tax preparer. So when we get information about clients referred to us, we review it and help prepare it, and we actually have our volunteer tax preparer file for the client. So for folks living in our service area, Greater Boston Legal Services, we're still a resource. And is that the end? Oh, next slide. So that was the slide that was supposed to go with what I just said. My email address is here. I believe it'll also be on the website. We'll be doing this as a Find Your Funds project, but just initially, you can contact me if you're at all interested. I have, materials. We'll be offering trainings for any organizations that might want to look into this. And if you're at all interested, please do contact us and find out what might be involved. Thanks so much. Turning it back to question and answer.
Great, thank you, Melanie. So now we have some time for a Q&A. We have, I think, about 10 to 15 minutes, and I see that there's some good questions in the chat. So I'll pull out a couple for our panelists. So the first question, and this might be Allison or Melanie, are children born in 2021 who don't appear on the 2020 tax return eligible for the child tax credit starting in July?
We're both nodding.
Yes, they are eligible for the child tax credit starting in July. They can do a couple of things. You could wait until you file your 2021 tax return and get the full $3,600 at tax time as you would do in a normal year. Or because this is an advance payment, you could use one of those IRS portals that we have been mentioning in order to let the IRS know of your new child.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question, if someone has filed their 2020 return late in 2020, but have not received the stimulus payments, what should they do?
Melanie, you want to take that one?
Well, yeah, this is one of the reasons we really need more organizations around the state to get involved. In Boston, because Greater Boston Legal Services has both a tax lawyer who's been running a low-income taxpayer clinic for decades, which is mainly for low-wage workers, and then we have a welfare law unit who got in the business of trying to help non-filers access stimulus payments and now child tax credit payments. We look at each case individually to see what needs to be done. Sometimes it's filing an amended return. Sometimes it's obtaining IRS power of attorney, which is kind of their authorization for a lawyer or a representative to deal with IRS on behalf of the client and look into what's going on. So there, from my past year's experience, there are hundreds of varying explanations why people who thought they should have gotten something didn't, and thought they had done the right thing. And it really, unfortunately, takes a further level of help to dig in and find out what to do. I mean, in theory, folks can call the IRS customer service, and and if they are able to go on the IRS website, depending on the particular issue, there is a lot of material on different steps you can take, but it is rather complicated to navigate. But the best thing I can say is if you have any functioning VITA site in your area, any access to volunteer tax preparers, to check with them, and if you want to try to develop resources, please contact me. One hope I have is that other legal services around the state are where the free nonprofit legal service providers of civil non-criminal representation, and resources are tight for everybody, but I'm hoping if there are organizations in other parts of the state that want to channel clients, channel families who need this kind of more complicated help, that we can get some of the other legal services organizations to play the role we're currently playing.
A couple more good questions, and I think Melanie, you just alluded to it, but maybe just to repeat, is there a way for clients to check what funds they've already received? So if someone's not sure.
There is an online place to check. On the IRS website, there's something called Get My Payment, and currently that's the place to see what IRS has to say about your 2021 stimulus payment. And it may be useful information, such as, we mailed it to you, you should on X date, and you should have gotten it. And then, if it's been a long time and you haven't gotten it, then you're facing the looking into it. Another place is Where's My Refund, another portal where if you're owed a refund, which includes folks who only filed to get the 2020 stimulus payments. The 2020 stimulus payments now count as recovery rebate credits, which if people filed for them on their 2020 tax return, counts as a refund. So there should be some information on the Get My Refund portal. And I think the website has links, right? We have links to it on Find Your Funds.
Yeah, and then for the advance payments, the IRS will be sending out letters in the next week or so to let people know that the advance payments are coming their way and how much they pay.
Great, and I just included those in the chat, and also we have those on our website in the FAQ section as well. Can you, either of you, maybe Allison, can you give advice on how to start the conversation with families regarding whether they have filed or received any of the payments?
Sure. This might actually be a better conversation for Melody. I know you have been doing this a lot, but I know we've heard from our clinic providers that, you know, particularly thinking about the families that haven't filed before, we recognize that this can be a difficult conversation. Taxes are often a really touchy issue for people to discuss. And so I think really often leading with the benefits and, you know, the changes that have happened, but also just being prepared to have a conversation with someone about a difficult issue. We know that the IRS is really scary for a lot of people to think about, and so just being prepared and taking trauma-informed approaches to a lot of those conversations. But I'll let Melanie weigh in on some of the conversations I know you've had over, particularly over the past year.
You know, it really varies. Immigrants may be worried if it'll affect status. Immigrants who've filed in the past with ITINs because they've worked are less worried about it. In some cases, we've referred folks we've had consults with our immigration unit just to extra reassure folks. But we can absolutely say that as long as the person is eligible, which if they're, you know, properly answering the questions on the tax return or on the Get Your Refund site, there's, you know, nothing to worry about immigration status wise if you're eligible. There are for immigrants who don't have green cards, as everybody calls it, there are some rules about who qualifies and who doesn't. They are much broader than the restrictive welfare rules some people may have heard of. They cover most people, but if an immigrant had any concern about whether they really qualified, where although they have a social security number, which probably means they have a work authorization, they're in a status like pending asylum application, and they're worried about whether it will have any impact on their pending asylum application. No, but it would be helpful for them to know also that pending asylum application probably is going to make them eligible. It's more how long they've been here when they're in that situation. So the website has and is going to have improved information if an immigrant is in that situation and wants to be absolutely sure they're eligible. I just talk down to earth. I say, these are the payments, you're supposed to get it. You know, the IRS isn't really set up for this kind of thing, but you know, you're stuck filing a tax return, but we'll help you do it, so you don't need to worry about it. And you know, most folks, if you explain it in a down-to-earth kind of way and acknowledge that, you know, it's new and different, and it's but that's the way to get the money, you know, or say, okay, that's the experience I've had.
That makes a lot of sense. And like Melanie and Allison said, we have a lot of resources on the Find Your Funds website. There's more Q&As in the FAQ too, if you have very specific questions, and then take a look at our partner page for, you know, some support on how to guide people through the process too. It looks like we've answered most of the questions, thanks to Charlotte on our Q&A here. So we might want to just skip to the next slide if there's not any other questions for this part. Great. And Allison, I might turn it over to you.
Sure. So as Senator Markey mentioned in his remarks, unfortunately, these terrific expansions to the Earned Income Tax Credit and Child Tax Credit are temporary. And as he noted, particularly on the Child Tax Credit, you know, being a parent doesn't end next year, that we really need to expand these credits permanently. So please contact your members of Congress to let them know that we need these expansions to be made permanent. Our colleagues at the Children's Defense Fund have made this very easy with their advocacy hub linked here. You can call your member of Congress. There's a call script there, email, write a letter to the editor in your local newspaper. Please just get the word out that these terrific benefits are going to go away unless Congress acts to make them permanent. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next slide. So I see another good question in the chat. Melanie, this one's for you. How can we go about organizing a training for our program staff if we want to offer this support to families on a greater scale?
You can contact me. I've been doing trainings mostly for law student interns, but we're working on, adapting it for other kinds of organizations. And, we'll be taking primary responsibility for putting it together, but the Sarah and her folks will make it look a lot nicer than I might otherwise. I think we're going to, record it. Unfortunately, working with the IRS, you're constantly dealing with a moving target, so we may need to do updated versions. But I'm happy to. We are planning to do a webinar training session specifically for groups who want to get involved.
Yeah, right. And again, just to reiterate, yep, our goal is to expand this work and make it more accessible. So please email Melanie, and all of our contact information is available on this slide. And just a couple call outs again, to please help spread the word using the findyourfunds.org website and materials. And also, we'll be updating the site as that new portal comes out and as new options are available for folks to help them file their taxes. So please keep an eye out on that website too. And I think just to close, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you spending this hour with us to learn about these tax credits, and we're really grateful to you and then to all of the partners on the call for supporting this work.